My name is Ashley Green. I left for college with dreams of becoming someone, only to return and find that everything I loved had been sold, erased, and forgotten by my own family. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. They thought I'd move on, stay quiet, accept that the past was over, but I wasn't raised to surrender. Because that house, it wasn't just walls and windows, it was the only place I ever felt safe. So I made a promise to fight, to rebuild, and to turn my deepest betrayal into something powerful. This is the story of how I took back what was mine, and gave it to those who never had anything to begin with. I had just finished my last final exam for the semester. After months of late night studying and cheap cafeteria food, I was ready to go home, not just to rest, but to reconnect with everything I missed. The creaky stairs, the backyard maple tree, and the familiar warmth of my childhood bed. I had been too busy to call my parents regularly. Every time I tried, they either didn't pick up or texted back with vague replies like, "We're busy, talk later." I assumed they were just caught up in their own lives. I never thought for a second that anything drastic had happened. The snow was thick as my Uber pulled up to the corner of 4th and Willow where my childhood home stood, or at least where it used to stand. I blinked. The mailbox still had our old number 418 Willow Lane, but the house had changed. It had a new paint job, a new fence, and the porch swing was gone. My swing. The one my dad promised he'd never take down. I stood there for a full minute in disbelief. Then the door opened. A woman in a silk robe stepped out. She looked at me with a confused smile and said, "Can I help you?" I stammered. I used to live here. This was my home." She nodded slowly. "Oh, you must be Ashley, right? The girl from the photos in the attic. The previous owners said they had a daughter in college, but they sold the place a few months ago. Didn't they tell you?" I couldn't speak. My lips trembled. I turned and walked away, heart pounding, eyes burning with tears. I didn't know where to go. I ended up at the local diner, staring at a cup of coffee I never touched. They sold it. Without telling me. My own parents erased me like I was a burden. But that night, as I sat in the diner booth, a spark lit inside me. This wasn't going to be the end. This was going to be the beginning. The next morning, I showed up at my parents' condo, a slick apartment they had moved into without even mentioning it to me. The front desk buzzed me in without question. Maybe they assumed I was just another visitor. Little did they know I was their forgotten daughter. I knocked once, then again, harder. My mother opened the door, surprised but not particularly emotional. "Ashley, what a surprise," she said, her voice tight. "Surprise?" I stepped in without waiting. "You sold the house. You didn't even tell me." Dad came out of the kitchen holding a coffee mug. "Ashley, calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down. That was my home. Why would you sell it and not even say a word?" Mom crossed her arms. "Because we didn't think you'd care. You're off in college building your own life. You were never home." My voice cracked. "That's not an excuse. You could have called." Dad sighed. "We needed the money. Your sister needed help with her startup, and we had to invest quickly. The house was just sitting there." I stared at them, unable to believe what I was hearing. "You sold my childhood for a startup." They didn't answer. That silence said everything. I had things there, my journals, my memories, the only piece of stability I had left. And you just erased it like it never mattered. "You're being dramatic," Mom said. "It's just a house." "No," I whispered, "it was my home, and now I see where I stand in this family." I turned and walked out. Not a single tear was shed by them, not a single apology. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing the new owner standing in the doorway of my room. But then I remembered something. Dad never transferred the land title into his name after Grandpa passed it to me. Legally, I still had a claim. So I opened my laptop and started making calls. If they thought they could sell my memories and forget me, they had no idea who I was becoming. The next morning, I met with a real estate lawyer downtown. I told him everything from the sale of the house to my grandfather's will. He leaned back in his chair, brow furrowed. You say your grandfather willed the house to you? Yes, I replied. But I was 16 then, so my parents handled everything. They told me I'd get the deed officially when I turned 21. He nodded slowly. Did you ever sign anything? Any release? No. He smiled faintly. Then you may have a case. If your name was on the will and the title wasn't fully transferred, the sale could be legally challenged, or at least you might be entitled to part of the proceeds. That was the crack in the wall I needed. He filed a motion the same week. I requested a freeze on the transaction, and to my surprise, the county clerk's office confirmed something even more bizarre. The new owners had never fully finalized the title transfer due to a backlog. Legally, it was still in my name. I had leverage. I returned to the neighborhood where my childhood home stood. This time, I didn't knock. I watched from across the street, remembering every holiday, every scraped knee, every firefly I caught on summer nights. The woman who lived there now came out again, surprised to see me. Look, I said gently, I'm not here to cause trouble. I just wanted you to know. There's a legal complication with the sale. It's still being sorted. She looked nervous. You mean I could lose the house? I shook my head. I'm not trying to take it from you, but I am going to get it back one way or another. And when I do, it won't just be a house anymore. That night, I made a promise to myself. If I could reclaim what they took from me, I wouldn't just live in it. I would open its doors to others who had been forgotten, like I was. Abandoned kids, teenagers cast aside, the ones nobody wanted. The home they erased would become a sanctuary. A week later, my lawyer called with an urgent tone in his voice. Ashley, he said, you need to come to my office. Now. We've found something. When I arrived, he handed me an envelope, old, slightly yellowed, sealed with a wax. My name was written in my grandfather's elegant handwriting. It was discovered in the original file box your parents left at the county office years ago. They never even opened it. I broke the seal, my hands trembling. Inside was a letter, dated 3 days before my grandfather passed. My dearest Ashley, if you're reading this, then I am no longer with you. I wanted this house to be yours, not just because of bricks and wood, but because you were always the one who loved it most. You saw beauty in the cracks, meaning in the memories. That's what a home really is. But more than that, I believe one day, you'll turn it into something bigger, a place of healing, of second chance. That's why the deed is in your name alone. They may try to take it from you, but don't let them. You're stronger than they know. Don't just reclaim this house, reclaim your purpose. Love always, Grandpa. Tears filled my eyes. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore, it was my calling. Fueled by that letter, my lawyer filed a formal injunction. The new owners were forced to pause all renovations. My parents were furious, calling me with a mix of guilt-tripping and veiled threats. You're tearing this family apart, Mom shouted over the phone. No, I said quietly. You did that when you sold me out. My father tried to reason. It was just a house, Ashley. No, I replied. It was the last thing that still felt like love. The media caught wind of the story. College girl battles parents over grandfather's home, and public sympathy poured in. Donations started to trickle into the GoFundMe my best friend had set up. I didn't ask for it, but people cared. People believed in the vision I hadn't even fully shared yet. It was time I made it real. I hadn't spoken to my sister, Melanie, in months. We used to be close, two sides of the same coin, but something shifted after I left for college. Calls became shorter, texts went unanswered, and now I was told she was the reason our home had been sold. Her startup, her dream, her price. I found her at a trendy cafe downtown, surrounded by her tech friends, laughing like nothing ever happened. She didn't see me until I stood right in front of her table. Ash? She blinked, looking genuinely surprised. Can we talk? I asked. My voice was calm, but my chest was burning. She followed me outside, clutching her overpriced latte like a shield. You used the money from the house, didn't you? I said directly. She sighed. Mom and Dad offered it. I didn't ask. You didn't refuse either. Her lips pressed into a line.
It was my one shot, Ashley. Investors weren't biting. I needed a way in. So you took our house. She looked away. You weren't even living there anymore. That doesn't mean it didn't matter to me. My voice cracked. It wasn't just a house, Mel. It was everything I had left. Her silence hurt more than a slap. I know, she finally said, soft. But I didn't think you'd fight this hard. I thought you'd let it go like everything else. I took a step closer. You don't know me anymore. Melanie looked down at her shoes. Maybe not, but if it means anything, I still have some of the money. I didn't use it all. I can wire it to you. I shook my head. I don't want your guilt money. I want accountability. Her voice barely rose above the wind. Then what do you want? I looked her in the eyes.
I want that house back, and when I do, I'm going to fill it with the very people this world throws away just like you threw me away. And I walked away, not knowing if she would ever understand. But I wasn't walking alone anymore. I had Grandpa's words. The law. And now, a growing group of people behind me. The storm was far from over, but I was finally learning how to stand in the rain. It was nearly midnight when my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. Hi, Ashley. I'm the current owner of 418 Willow Lane. Can we talk? I stared at it, torn between suspicion and curiosity. After a moment, I replied, Sure. What's this about? She answered almost immediately. I've been thinking about your story, about what you said, and I've done some digging on my own. Would you be open to meeting tomorrow? The next afternoon, I stood outside the house I once called home again. The woman greeted me at the door. Her name was Claire. She looked softer this time, less defensive. Come in, she said. I made tea. It was strange being inside. The walls were painted beige now. The family portraits were gone, replaced with minimalist art, but somehow, the soul of the house still lingered in the creaking floorboards and faint scent of old wood. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I once did homework and ate pancakes on Saturdays. Claire cleared her throat. I've been living here for 3 months, but I always felt like something was missing. Like the house wasn't really mine. I didn't speak. I let her continue. I saw the news, read the article. Then I went to the county office and checked the documents myself. She took a breath. They sold me a house that legally still belongs to you. I nodded. I know. I'm not trying to be the villain here, she said gently. I just wanted a fresh start for my son and me. After the divorce, we needed somewhere stable. Her voice cracked. For the first time, I saw the hurt in her eyes, not just guilt. I'm not going to fight you, she continued. But I have a proposal. I raised an eyebrow. I'll sign the release papers, walk away peacefully, but only if you promise to keep this house a home, a real home, not a courtroom trophy. I felt a lump rise in my throat. I'm turning it into a shelter, I whispered, for kids who don't have anywhere else to go. Claire smiled faintly. Then that's all I need. She reached into her bag and handed me a file, the transfer documents already signed. You fought for this place because you loved it. That's rare, she said. Don't ever let that love fade. I left the house that day with the keys in my hand. The home was mine again. But this time, it wouldn't just be mine. It would belong to every forgotten child who needed a place to heal. The first thing I did when I got the keys back was walk through every room in silence. The living room, where I used to dance barefoot to Grandpa's old records. The hallway where growth marks still faintly showed on the wall. The attic dusty, untouched, where my dreams were born beneath a leaky roof. It was all mine again. But it wasn't for me anymore. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. I launched a small fundraiser online. Help us build Haven House, a shelter for lost kids. Within days, donations poured in from old friends, kind strangers, even former teachers. People left messages like, "This is what the world needs," and "Thank you for being their voice." I reached out to contractors, painters, social workers. I designed bedrooms with bunk beds and murals, a reading corner, a therapy room. For the first time in months, I felt purpose in every heartbeat. Until the phone rang. It was Dad. "You've taken this too far," he growled. "Do you think you look noble in the papers? Do you have any idea what kind of damage you've done to this family?" "Damage?" I repeated. "You mean the kind where a daughter is erased from her own life without a word?" "You humiliated us," he snapped. "Your mother can't even go to her book club anymore. Maybe she should start a new one on how to betray your own child." There was silence, then a threat. "If you keep pushing this, don't expect a place at this family's table again." I almost laughed, bitter but free. "There is no table, Dad. You sold it." And I hung up. I sat in the middle of the empty living room afterward, breathing through the storm that had just hit me again. But I wasn't alone this time. Because just then a knock came at the door. I opened it to find a teenage boy, barely 15, clutching a worn-out backpack and a piece of cardboard with shaky handwriting. "I heard this is a place for kids like me." My voice caught in my throat. "Yes," I said. "Yes, it is. Welcome home." The house had begun to breathe again. The walls echoed not with silence, but with laughter, quiet, hesitant laughter from children learning to trust. There were now 3 kids living at Haven House: Marcus, a 15-year-old runaway with eyes too old for his age, Jasmine, 12, who flinched at every raised voice, and Leo, just 8, who had memorized the corners of every room in fear of being moved again. We weren't a family, not yet, but we were becoming something like one. That afternoon, I was sweeping the hallway when I heard a soft knock at the front door. I opened it and froze. It was my mother. She looked older than I remembered, not in her face but in her eyes, like life had peeled something away. "May I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She didn't look around like someone returning home. She sat quietly on the edge of the couch, clutching a sealed envelope. "I came to apologize," she said, "not just for the house, but for everything." I said nothing. She placed the envelope on the table between us. "It's from your grandfather. I never told you about it because I didn't want you to believe he loved you more." My breath caught. "I found it the day he died. I read it once, then hid it away." She swallowed. "But I see now that was wrong." I opened the envelope with shaking hands. "My darling Ashley, if this finds you late, it's okay. Love has no expiration. I saw the fire in you when you were still in pigtails, the way you protected stray cats, the way you fought for your sister even when she didn't deserve it. That heart, it's your greatest gift. They may not always see it, they may even fear it, but never shrink to make others comfortable. You were meant to build something bigger than yourself. This house, this land, is just the beginning. Don't stop when you get it back. Start. With love, Grandpa." Tears ran silently down my cheeks. I looked at my mother, expecting regret. What I saw was pain. "I didn't understand you," she whispered, "but I think I do now." Before she left, she handed me an envelope with a check inside, not as compensation but as support. "For the kids," she said. "They deserve better than what we gave you." I nodded, unable to speak. As she walked out the door, I didn't know if she'd ever return. But something had changed. Not just in her, but in me. I was repainting the hallway when I heard a knock, sharp and official, the kind that carries bad news. Standing on the porch was a man in a gray city jacket, clipboard in hand, a badge clipped to his belt. "Miss Green?" he asked. "Yes?" "I'm here from the City Zoning and Safety Office. We received a report that a residential property is being used as an unlicensed shelter. I'm afraid we need to inspect the premises immediately." The air thickened. "A report?" I asked. "From who?" "I can't disclose that," he replied. "But if you are operating any group care services here, you need the proper clearance or you risk shutdown." He stepped inside. I followed him through every room as he scribbled on his clipboard, muttering terms like non-compliant egress, occupancy threshold, and insufficient safety signage. Every note felt like a crack in the foundation I'd worked so hard to rebuild. At the end of the inspection, he turned to me. Technically, you're not allowed to house unrelated minors without a provisional group care license. You'll need to file within 48 hours and pass an emergency inspection or vacate the residence immediately. 48 hours? I gasped. I've just gotten these kids off the street. He sighed, softening. I'm not here to be the bad guy, but the law is the law. If you want to keep them here, get your paperwork in fast. I'll return in 2 days. After he left, I sat on the porch steps, head in my hands. The children were inside, drawing on the floor, oblivious to the storm that loomed again. And then a spark. I called Elena, a local social worker I'd met at a community event. Within hours, she arrived with a checklist, a network of contacts, and something I didn't realize I still needed: hope. We're going to make this work, she said. You've come too far to stop now. For the next 48 hours, we worked like our lives depended on it. Fire extinguishers, exit plans, documentation, donor letters. We even got a retired nurse to volunteer part-time for basic care supervision. The house buzzed with movement and urgency, and somehow, unity. Everyone, including the kids, pitched in. Because this wasn't just a house anymore. It was a haven. The morning of the inspection felt like standing on a wire with no net below. The kids were quiet, dressed neatly, seated in the living room like tiny models of order. Elena was there, clipboard ready, walking through final checks with calm authority. Then came the knock. The same inspector stepped in, businesslike, expression unreadable. He toured the bedrooms, now outfitted with proper emergency lights and printed fire escape maps. He walked through the kitchen, labeled drawers, allergen notices, food storage logs, all in place. He even smiled faintly when he saw the therapy nook designed with beanbags, storybooks, and calming colors. You've done a lot in 48 hours, he said, almost impressed. I was about to breathe when the front door opened without a knock. And in stepped Melanie. My sister. She looked panicked, out of breath, holding her phone. Ashley, I just got word that Dad is filing an emergency injunction to block your license. He's claiming you're mentally unstable and unfit to run a shelter. My blood turned to ice. The inspector turned to me, startled. Is this true? No, I said firmly. It's a personal attack. My father is trying to discredit me because I stood up to him. He's using every tactic he can. Melanie stepped forward, placing her phone on the table. I recorded the call, he said, and I quote, she wants to play savior, then let her drown in the paperwork. The inspector blinked. You recorded this? Yes, I can forward it to your office, Melanie said, voice steady. He nodded slowly. That won't be necessary right now. He flipped through his inspection notes in silence. The house was quiet, tense. The kids watched from the stairs, not daring to move. Then he pulled out a pen and signed. I'm authorizing a temporary license for Haven House pending full review. You're compliant enough to continue operating. Tears filled my eyes. Thank you, I whispered. He handed me the papers and turned to leave. Sometimes, the system needs reminders that rules are made to serve people, not the other way around. As the door shut behind him, I turned to Melanie, who had just saved everything. Why? I asked. She gave a faint smile, because for once, I wanted to be part of something good. 3 weeks passed since the inspection. Haven House had become more than a shelter. It was a pulse, a living, breathing place of second chances. Volunteers came and went. Donations arrived. The local news even ran a feature titled, From Heartbreak to Haven, one woman's mission to rewrite her story. I finally felt at peace, until the envelope arrived. It was handwritten, smudged at the edges, addressed to Ashley Green, Director, Haven House. I didn't recognize the handwriting until I read the signature at the bottom. Ryan Blake. My childhood bully. The same boy who used to trip me in the hallway, mock my clothes, and call me Weird Willow Girl. The same Ryan who once stole my diary and read it aloud in front of the class. I almost tossed the letter in the trash, but something made me read. Ashley, I don't expect you to forgive me. I wouldn't if I were you. But I heard about what you're doing at Haven House and I need your help. I have a son. His name is Eli. He's 6. I messed up bad, lost custody. His mom passed away last month and now the state has him. They say he'll go to foster care if no one steps in. I'm not in a place to take him, not yet. But I heard what you do. I thought maybe you'd take him in, just until I get my life together. I swear I'm trying. This isn't about me anymore. It's about giving Eli a better shot than I ever had. Please, let him feel safe somewhere. Ryan. I stared at the letter for a long time. I had every reason to say no, every reason to ignore the plea of someone who once made my life hell. But this wasn't about Ryan. It was about Eli, a child caught in a storm he never asked for. And if I really believed in second chances, it had to start with me. I picked up the phone, called my caseworker, and began the intake process. 3 days later, a small boy with sandy brown hair stepped through our door, clutching a tattered teddy bear. "Hi, Eli," I said gently. "Welcome to Haven House." He looked up at me with wide, unsure eyes. "Do I live here now?" I smiled. "Only as long as you need to." He walked in without another word. And I realized sometimes, the ones who hurt us the most are the ones who lead us to our greatest purpose. Spring had settled in, and with it came new life. Haven House was full not just with children, but with music, meals, stories, and healing. Jasmine had started writing poetry. Marcus helped paint the garden fence. Little Leo no longer cried at bedtime. And Eli, he now ran through the hallways like he'd lived here forever, his teddy always in one hand and a crayon in the other. I was reviewing blueprints for our second location funded by the city after our story went viral when a familiar knock echoed through the front door. I opened it. It was my father. Older, paler, a tremble in his hand. "Ashley," he said, voice low. "May I come in?" I hesitated. The weight of everything he had done hung in the space between us. But something in his eyes had changed, not pride, not anger, just quiet surrender. I stepped aside. He looked around the house like he was seeing it for the first time, the bunk beds, the kids' drawings, the smell of baked bread wafting from the kitchen. "This is," he whispered, "nothing like what I expected." "It's not meant to be," I said. "It's meant to be better." He sat down slowly. I was wrong about everything. I thought I was protecting the family, doing what was practical, but I see now I was just protecting myself, from shame, from change, from you becoming more than I ever dared to dream. I sat across from him, arms folded. "It's too late for apologies, Dad." He nodded. "I know. I didn't come to be forgiven. I came to see what you built, because I realize now, I never gave you the love you deserved." I watched him, the man who once erased me, now sitting in the very place I rebuilt from the ashes he left. "I don't hate you," I said softly, "but I can't forget either." He looked up. "I wouldn't ask you to, just maybe one day, you'll leave the door open a little." He stood, lingered, and then turned to leave. As the door closed, I felt something loosen in my chest. Maybe forgiveness wasn't a moment. Maybe it was a process, like healing, like home building. And as I walked through Haven House that evening, checking on each sleeping child, I whispered to the walls what I had longed to say all my life. We made it, in arms.